You're now tuned in to The Investor Show, where we teach simple wealth creation for the common investors. With investment advisor, award-winning author, international speaker, and founder of Royal Financial Investment Group, Prince Dykes.
We'll just take it from the top. Once again, guys. Okay, I can cut all that stuff. I take it from here. Since we done been through it about 2 or 3 times, we're pretty good on it. So, all right. Once again, guys, this is the Investor Show. As always, this is your host, Prince Dykes, coming to you guys live all the way from Hawaii. Nice, beautiful weather out here. This is the first podcast of me coming back to Hawaii. I know I was in Japan for a little while, but I'm back in Hawaii and I'm happy. But as always, guys, I got another great episode coming to you guys. As you guys can already see in the description box, we're going to go through the start and the start and where PayPal come from and what you guys can listen to and pick up for your daily lives and all of the great stuff like that. We got a very special guest by the name of Paul Martin, but as always, I don't have a lot of time, and I definitely know you guys don't have a lot of time, so we're going to jump straight into it. Today's episode, we have Mr. Paul Martin calling in from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the thing about him is I had a friend of mine that came to me and said, hey, the producer of the show, Chad, came to me and said, hey, I got this great guy. He was one of the original guys that helped start PayPal. He was one of all these awesome people. He was in this awesome book. And I said, you know what? Man, we got to have him on the show. So we're glad to have him to come in and stop by. We did a couple of videos, but they was kind of not going too well, but we made it happen today. But I'm not going to jump straight into it. But without further ado, Mr. Paul Martin, how you doing?
Doing great, Prince. Thanks for having me on.
Definitely. So for the people out there who don't know who Paul Martin is, who is Paul Martin?
Well, that's changed a lot over time. Right now, Paul Martin is a police sergeant with the Albuquerque Police Department, father of 5. We homeschool them, and we play a ton of soccer, and I coach youth and play with a men's team, and that's what we do these days.
That's pretty good, right? That's a great thing as far as soccer. That's some pretty good cardio right there. It looks easy on TV. So I got out there 1 or 2 times. I'm like, oh my goodness. It's a lot of running. But the thing about it is, how did you go from being one of the original founders of PayPal to a police officer?
Well, you know what? I was never really a business person. I was brought into PayPal by the thrill of adventure. I was a student at Stanford University. I was running track. Honestly, that was my real focus. And I was majoring in history, and I ended up wanting to look for a summer job to pay for a ring, an engagement ring for my wife, Allison. And I was involved with a student newspaper at Stanford called the Stanford Review, which was a student-run paper, one of the, I believe actually the only publication on campus that received 0 funding from the university because we were the outcast, rebellion, conservative newspaper. And so we raised all of our funds and did our own thing and voiced very unpopular opinions, opinions that would be unpopular anywhere in California, but probably popular anywhere else in the country for the most part. But anyway, the founder of the Stanford Review was Peter Thiel, which everyone kind of knows who he is now, but back then people didn't. But we did. We loved Peter, and he always stayed in touch with all the new kids who were coming in and taking the paper on their shoulders and moving forward with it. And at the time, Peter was running a firm called Thiel Capital Management, which was a hedge fund. And he was running that just off campus. And he was actually employing Michael Toth to intern with him there. And Michael also became an editor-in-chief of the Stanford Review. And the grammar and spelling and punctuation were atrocious. Michael is a great author. He's been published multiple times for his works on the Founding Fathers, but he cannot spell. He absolutely cannot spell. And
you know what? It's a crazy story, Paul. That sounds like me. I can't spell for the crap. But I
was like, dude, this is no good. You need me to help. He's like, yeah, come on, be the copy editor. And so I became the copy editor for the paper and later the business manager. So when it came time for me to look for a summer, it was natural for me to look to Peter, because I knew he had a new company called Confinity, and I didn't know that much about what they were doing, but I figured out it's Peter, it'll be good. And so in January of 2000, I went down to the Confinity office, which was on University Avenue, just off of campus, and went to see Peter. Peter was late to the meeting, which anyone who knows Peter, that wouldn't surprise them. And my buddy Eric Jackson was there. He was a previous editor-in-chief of the Stanford Review. He had graduated class of 97 or class of 98, and he had been working for Arthur Anderson up in what we call the city in San Francisco. And I didn't realize that he had joined Confinity. So I saw him there, and he proceeded to show me all of these typical, startup charts, massive user growth, massive, transaction volumes, which I didn't realize at the time that most of those users were kind of useless, and those transaction volumes mostly represented losses, not gains for the company.
Wow. But it works.
Basically a credit card transaction company. And we were at that time, the company was processing those transactions without a fee. So the company itself was eating all the percentages for the processing of those credit card transactions. And which was on purpose. That was, the idea is kind of the standard startup model that existed, at least at that time. And to an extent, I think it definitely still exists today. Grab as large a share of the market as you can, and then worry about monetizing it.
Wow.
And that was, and on top of that, they were also paying $10 for every new sign-up and $10 for every new user that you referred. So the company is paying massive amounts of money per user, which they were quick to point out was still actually cheaper than traditional advertising on a per user basis. But bottom line, there was a ton of money flowing out, not much money flowing in, but all I saw was these great charts that just had these great exponential curves. And the other thing I saw was a really cool group of people that were dedicated to each other and dedicated to their enterprise, and they had this wonderful, this to me very attractive us against the world mentality, and nothing can stop us, we can overcome anything, and we're going to take down all the giants and face down all the banks and everybody, and this happened. And it was very exciting to me, and I ended up dropping out of school and joining them.
Wow. Okay, so you pretty much just dropped out of school, went on with this new company called Confinity, out of the blue. And, that's so how much were you getting paid? What was your introduction? How did it look like in the beginning?
So I had, when I was coming in, of course, zero business experience. Well, not zero business experience. I had been a waiter one summer at Shoney's. And that's great business experience. Great. That was the grand total of my business experience. And I came in with the very unimpressive title of marketing associate. and I had a beautiful $35,000 paycheck per year to go with that, despite the fact that I was living in one of the most expensive places on earth at the time. But like pretty much everyone there, primarily we were being compensated with stock options. So it was a big bet on the future. Basically, if we succeed, it's going to be great.
Pretty much it was saying,
if we don't succeed,
so it's pretty much, Paul, so I said pretty much what it was saying was the stock options was like, hey, we're going to, you know, if the company goes public or when it goes public, you guys will be a piece of shareholders, essentially, right?
Well, exactly, because the stock options that we received allowed us to, you know, purchase those shares at a future time for the current valuation of the company, which was very, very low. And so, you know, then if we were successful, we knew, well, this is going to be worth a lot of money eventually, but only if we succeed, which was very, very highly in doubt if you wanted to look at it from an objective point of view. But in our minds, it was for sure. We're definitely going to make this work, because, you know, we looked at each other and we're like, you know, nothing can stop us. Nothing can stop us. We're putting in, every single one of us is putting in 100+ hours a week. We're you know, a smart group. We're a motivated group. You know, who's going to stop us? And we didn't see anybody step up and be able to do it. That was our point of view.
You're tuned into The Investor Show with Prince Dykes.
So who were some of y'all competitors back then?
Oh, there was such a cast of characters. So on the funny side, you had all of these copycat sites like PayMe and YouPay and this and that, and most of them, they were just they were honestly jokes. Our serious competitors there was a company called X.com, which was created by a guy named Elon Musk. They were coming out things from
So when Elon Musk started, he wasn't with you guys. He started as X.com somewhere else.
No, he was our competitor. And X.com came from a very different angle. We were coming at it from a very light transactional, you know, we're going to use this to make and receive payments. He was coming at it basically trying to create an online bank. And the payment aspect of it was just seen as a driver of user growth. But we're creating full-fledged bank accounts with credit being extended and all kinds of things. It was a much heavier product than what we had, and you could see it in the staff that they had. I would say on average the people working at X.com were probably 15 years older per person than the people that were at Confinity.
Wow.
But where we were similar is they were doing $10 per year bounties that we were. So we were killing each other.
Wow.
So we had that competitor, and that competitor, that ended up being resolved shortly after I joined, just a couple months after I joined, with a merger. And that's a very interesting story, because that was a clash of cultures and resulted eventually in a civil war. But more urgently, because we had discovered that where we were actually being used, where the PayPal application was actually being used, was on eBay. But eBay had taken a company called BillPoint, had purchased them like a year and a half earlier, and then had basically sat on them, but was now finally ready to roll out their product, which was going to directly compete with us for processing payments on eBay. So we were fighting with the 800-pound gorilla in the 800-pound gorilla's own backyard.
Wow. So you guys didn't see sharing the marketplace as a plus. You guys like, no, it's going to be me or you. We're going to duke it out.
Our belief was that one of these businesses was going to create the killer app for that and create a monopoly.
Now, this killer app.
I did not believe there'd be more than one.
Now, this killer app, which one would be, when you said who's going to create this killer app, now what did you think about, we're not talking about smartphone. You're talking about Palm Pilots.
And that's where it started,
wow.
The Palm Pilot. And you're right, because cell phones, and I got my first cell phone right after I joined PayPal. And I was the first of all my friends at Stanford that I knew. And these are, people that you would consider to be early adopters, for sure. Mm-hmm. And I was the first one of my group of friends that had a cell phone. But people had Palm Pilots. Everyone out there had a Palm Pilot. Now, it wasn't like that back home in Arkansas, where I was from. But in Silicon Valley, everybody had a Palm Pilot. And everyone was assuming that the way that whole market was going to go was that Palm was going to add phone capabilities to the Palm Pilot, and that was going to be the killer device. So, the PayPal for the Palm Pilot, but to make it work, you kind of had to have a web app as well. And it was the users on eBay who discovered PayPal's web application and started using it. And when we discovered, which was our little marketing group, which was me and Eric Jackson and Jennifer Kuo, when we discovered that how the eBay users were using PayPal, then the rest of the company became aware, this is where we need to be putting our efforts. This is where we've got to go with this. And this was a culture that was looking for that sort of thing. This was a humble culture, maximum ambition, but also heavy on humility. There was no sense of, we know exactly how we're going to do this. It was a sense of, we're going to find out how to do this. And so everyone was constantly looking for clues from the market to guide our product. And the eBay users did that.
Wow. Okay. So now what happened to X.com, Elon Musk's company?
So we merged. An interesting was made. So Elon became the new CEO. Peter had been the CEO of Confinity. and Max had been the CTO. So Elon became the CEO of the merged company, and the merged company was officially named X.com or X something Holdings or whatnot. But X was the actual parent company, and PayPal was now just a product, and Confinity, that kind of disappeared entirely. But the second level employees, so your COO, your CFO, your CTO, all of those were from the PayPal side.
And when you said, so has PayPal been created yet, or are you talking about Confinity?
Yes. So yes, absolutely. PayPal has been at this point, and you got to keep in mind that these things all happened in such rapid succession that I understand that from an external viewpoint, it could kind of look like all this stuff kind of happened at the same time. But in my mind, I can tell you exactly what order they happened in, even though it might be like a 1 or 2 day difference here. That's the lightning pace that all of this was happening at. Their office was right down the street from ours, and when we merged, the PayPal was already being used on the web application by the eBay users. And the X.com application, their web payments application, had also started to be used on eBay. The merger meant we got rid of the X.com payment application. And the idea was that we would work towards combining the PayPal payments application with the X.com bank accounts.
Okay.
And the idea was that you would migrate users from a light payments product into a heavy bank account / investment fund kind of account. The other there were several things that went on there with the whole.
So you had Confinity. You come along, you jump into Confinity. Then all of a sudden you hear this guy by the name of Elon Musk. You know, who people don't know who Peter Thiel is. Peter Thiel is like what, a couple of billionaire, multi-billionaire by now. But but Peter Thiel is over at Confinity with this new company, just talking about, hey, we're going to build a app for what's those things? Palm Pilots.
The Palm Pilot. Yeah.
Palm Pilot, building an app for a Palm Pilot called Confinity. Out of the blue, you get a big competitor come on down the street called X.com, ran by Elon Musk, who's now Tesla and all of the good stuff like that. And together, you guys decide to merge, right? Now, where is this
for survival reasons, we were killing each other.
So you guys said, hey, we got to come together, or we're going to kill each other.
Mm-hmm.
So now, which one was the bigger company at the time when you guys merged? Was it X.com, or was it Confinity?
So officially it was Confinity, but what people knew us as, what our actual users knew us as, was PayPal. And you could see kind of, if you look up like archive.org, you can see a really funny progression of our websites, because it was Confinity, and there was like the PayPal product that was on one of the tabs, and then it's PayPal by Confinity, and then next thing you know, it's PayPal.com, and these, like I said, things were moving very, very fast. You get different phases happening like inside of the same month. Things were moving very, very quickly.
Now, how did PayPal come about? As far as what was that name come from? It just, when you guys merged, somebody said, hey, PayPal.
So we actually paid a firm to come up with a good name. And they came up with several names, and Peter and Max chose the one that they liked the best. That group. And I think that cost, I want to say it was something in the range of like $20-something thousand that they paid for that service to come up with a name.
So they paid they paid a consultant company $20,000 just to come up with a name.
Mm-hmm.
And
whereas on the other side, Elon paid. He really loved the idea of the X brand, because he felt like it was like Visa. It was something that you could turn into whatever you wanted it to be. Focus groups, otherwise, they hated that brand, but that's what he felt, and he actually bought. It's one of the rare single-letter domain names that's available, and he bought X.com with his personal money for $1 million.
Show, and you're checking in with the investor genius, Prince Dykes. Let's get
it. Wow.
So he was very dedicated, very invested in that brand, which caused big problems for us later and contributed to the civil war inside the company that I alluded to.
Okay. So now you guys are, walking down this path. You walk in there, you got Confinity, you got X.com. They pay a consulting firm. They come up with this name called PayPal. Now, how does this civil war ensue?
So we had very different cultures at the two companies, obviously, based on, the kinds of things we were trying to do. They were trying to become a very serious, very sensible financial company. We were trying to be this light, fast, trendy startup that could, basically replace everyone's wallet for how they did transactions. But we didn't have any intention of, banking or investments or anything more grown up like that. And so there was a lot of culture clash. We ended up moving. We had those two little offices on University Avenue, and we, then we hired a bunch more people. I think we hired another 50 people. We doubled the size of the company again over the course of the summer of 2000, and moved into a new office just on the other side of the 101, just barely in Palo Alto still, almost in East Palo Alto. And, it was a beautiful, stereotypical startup environment, all on one story, everyone in cubes, even the CEO, he just has a bigger cube, and everyone has full access to everyone. There's no such thing as a closed door. There's not even doors. And so while this civil war went down, and the way it went down was this. Elon wanted to change the brand from PayPal to X.com. He wanted to change our computing platform. He wanted to change our code base from Unix to Windows. And, this was being done at a time when we were losing $1 million per month. I'm sorry, $10 million. $10 million per month. And so our burn rate was pretty bad, even though we had raised a massive amount of money right at the end of the prime fundraising time in Silicon Valley before the bubble burst. But we're trying to undergo these massive changes, which are actually negative changes, at the same time that we're trying to fight off all of these existential risks. And so a petition was created, and the petition was signed by a ton of people from the PayPal side, which were all key personnel. And the petition was given to the board of directors, and the petition said, Elon is out as CEO or we're all gone. And
so people were upset with the whole idea of, coming in, you want to change the coding, you want to change the service. It's like, hey, get Elon out of here or we're gone.
Yeah, because the handwriting was on the wall. If we can put down that path for the rest of 2000, there would not have been a 2001. It was all going away. And, Elon is a brilliant guy, but he had the wrong ideas at that point in time for that company. And a lot of the conflict that happened, I think, were holdovers of this cultural divide that there was between the PayPal people and the X.com people. But that was successful. Peter was brought back as a CEO. And
so Elon decided to step down?
So he stepped down. He was still, of course, on the board of directors. He was, in terms of a single person, he was still the most heavily invested individual in the company. No one owned more of the company than Elon did. So he's, still very heavily invested in the success of the company. And, he wasn't going to try to part, for the sake of retaining his CEO title.
Got it.
So he stepped down. Peter came back from his South American vacation he was on and took his place back as CEO. And the immediate change in morale was incredible. And most of the people there were PayPal people. The minority that were real X.com people were very sad there. But they all came around and realized, okay, this needed to be done. And so we moved forward, and we really moved forward without any problems from there. And during this whole time, my role had changed significantly, because something that Elon did that was very, very good for the company was he reorganized and reprioritized the inner workings of the company. So what he did was he got rid of the marketing group. And, honestly, we were kind of spinning our wheels. We were struggling to find ways to contribute. And what he did was create a product group. So a group of product managers where each product manager would be in charge of an entire marketplace where our product was either already being used or where it could potentially be used. And my piece of that pie was the product manager for online. I was in charge of all of our eBay products. And we did Yahoo auctions and Amazon auctions back then. And of course those things I don't even think those exist anymore, but eBay was 85% of our transactions at the time. And my role, the roles that these product managers, which he didn't call them product managers, he called them producers. That was David Sachs's idea. And David Sachs was the head of the product group and later became our COO. He's done all kinds. I think most recently he's been in the news because he became the CEO and now I'm blanking out on the name. Zenefits. He took over as the CEO of Zenefits.
Okay.
They were in some very serious trouble in terms of their compliance with federal regulations and some different things, and he took them over for about a year and turned them all the way around, has made them the poster boy for transparency and compliance. But in any case, he was the head. He was put in charge of our product group. He was our senior vice president for product and then later CEO. But anyway, we were given carte blanche inside our realms. So for me, in online auctions, we were given basically ultimate power. We were put in charge of all engineering efforts, design efforts, business development, customer service, marketing, you name it. Everything for our particular market went through the product managers. And I had a particularly really awesome team that worked for me. I had an HTML, web designer named Chad Hurley, who of course ended up co-founding YouTube. And I had a totally brilliant engineer named Upan, who was one of the original PayPal founders.
Wow.
And those guys were just absolutely fabulous. And anyway, we just, this product, using this product group, using that paradigm, we were able to just completely overwhelm anything that eBay would do to compete with us in that space, because we would get done in a day what it would take them a week to do. We were never tied to anything. They would have these like 3-4 month product cycles, where they would decide what they were going to build and then spend the next 3 or 4 months building it and then put it out. And during that same amount of time, we might have three or 4 product cycles, and we might make something, and the day before we're going to release it, totally change it or scrap and build something else instead. There were times where we realized, this is what we need to build, and then we would just stay up for the next 72 hours and push it out live onto the website. And there was just no way for them to compete with that. We would get suggestions from our power sellers on eBay about a product they would like to see us build. And the next Monday, it'd be available on the website for them. And there was just no way that they could compete with us on that. And that was really, that organization, that way of reorganizing the company was what really ended up pushing PayPal through all of the different challenges that it faced, the rest of that year, because our productivity was just extreme.
Now, when you say product, right, so that was a good thing that Elon Musk had done for you guys, where they pretty much turned you guys from marketers into product producers. When you say product, what product were you guys producing?
Sure. So, and it was different based on, the different markets that the various producers were working on. So for me, it was very simple. Anything that could improve the user experience for buyers and sellers on eBay, or anything that could encourage more, either more use of the product or for more people to use it. And
Got it.
And these things sound simple. These things sound really, really simple. But you got to remember that all of these things were very difficult to build for us in terms of programming, because we weren't building these things on our website. We were building things to work on someone else's website who did not like us.
Oh, wow.
So to an extent, it was almost like we were creating malware that had to, at the same time, be fully, had to be supporting fully secure transactions. So we were giving users ways to automatically have a PayPal payment button actually automatically loading into all of their auctions. And at night we would run batch processes where we would detect all of that user's auctions and go in and edit their auction listing to have the PayPal payment logo in it and things like that. And it was a constant running battle with eBay on in terms of what was technically allowed and explicitly in the rules what was allowed. And it was wild. It was absolutely wild. It was kind of like guerrilla warfare, because we were the little guy trying to play in their territory, and they had to walk a very fine line, because we jumped on everything so fast and we built up our user base in their market so quickly that we had a lot of support from their users. And up until this time, eBay had been very supportive of all kinds of third-party companies providing services to their users. But this was the first time that they actually had a competing product that they were counting on bringing in large revenues, because they had told their shareholders it was going to happen. And
wow.
We were throwing a massive wrench in that, and they would have loved to just can us. And in retrospect, from their point of view, maybe they should have, but they were unwilling to do that because of the massive backlash they would have received from their own users. In my opinion, in a lot of people's opinion, they underestimated their own market power. I think they underestimated just how strong they were. I think they were still concerned about Amazon's online auctions and Yahoo's online auctions, and they shouldn't have been. They were really the only game in town, and it seemed like they didn't realize that.
Now, my question is, how did it come up to you departing PayPal and, becoming into a police officer? Sure.
Well, so, in terms of the PayPal story, I've only brought you up to late 2000. So 2001, we continued all these same fights. We were fighting against eBay. We were fighting against, Russian mafia hackers. We were fighting against the big banks that wanted to get us slapped with all kinds of labels that would have required massive regulation on us. And the whole time while we're trying to do all of this, we're trying to raise more money so that we can stay alive long enough to be long enough to get to profitability. And we're also working really hard to lay the groundwork for an initial public offering. So through 2001, we moved forward on all fronts, and we hit profitability. And this, I want to throw this in because this is a key part of my story. This is probably the best single thing I did at PayPal. We had to get our customers to start paying. And up until, going into 2001, we still were not receiving any money from our users. Okay? People talk about, oh, well, the money that's in PayPal accounts, you're getting interest off of that. I mean, that was ridiculous. It was such a minuscule amount of money. But every time someone was paying with a credit card, which you could pay with a credit card or with your bank account or with money in your PayPal balance, but every time someone paid with a credit card, we were eating the 2.5% plus 25 cents or whatever it was on that transaction. So we're losing massive amounts of money. We've got to get that turned around. So I was put in charge of the product side, and Eric Jackson was put in charge of the marketing side of what we called the Forced Upgrade Campaign, or the FU. And what we did was we figured that no one ever wants to reject a payment from a customer. So whereas other internet companies had made big announcements, oh, we're going to start charging for our service, and then seen all of their users vanish overnight, we did kind of prep people, hey, if you're a large volume merchant, you're going to end up having to pay for processing transactions, a small, reasonable amount. This costs us money. You're going to have to share this cost, that kind of thing. And we started easing that messaging in, and that was Eric's job. And I designed a product that made it very difficult for people to say no. And the way it worked was, once you reached a certain dollar threshold in received payments, any subsequent payments that came in, you would have two choices. You could either upgrade to a business account, or you could reject the payment. And 99+% of people...
Who's going to reject the payment?
Exactly. And that was the beauty of it. We did not give anyone a choice of whether or not you want to be a business account. We made them choose whether or not they wanted to accept a payment. And that was where we succeeded where so many other companies failed, in what was considered to be the most difficult task in Silicon Valley at the time, which was actually getting people to pay for a previously free service. So that was successful. Very shortly after that, we became profitable. And then on Valentine's Day 2002, we IPO'd, and was a very successful IPO. And I didn't actually get to be there for the party because my wife and I went to the Winter Olympics at that time and enjoyed that. That was awesome over in Utah. But the pictures and the videos that I've seen of that party were absolutely epic. And, of course, you had Peter Thiel. He's a chess master. And you had him drinking massive amounts while playing against 10 people on 10 separate chessboards at the same time, that kind of thing, which I believe that's the only time David Sachs ever managed to beat him in a game of chess, and David is an excellent chess player himself. The other 9 lost.
Wow, even when he was piss poor drunk.
Yes, absolutely. So you were asking how I got to where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once we got to that point of success, the adventure was basically over from my point of view. Now we're public. Now we're not running our own company anymore, really. Once you're public, you don't really call the shots anymore. It's the shareholders that really call the shots. And I'll just give you one example of how things changed, and I think you'll see what I mean. So when we were just independent, privately held PayPal, if I wanted to create a new product and I wanted to work my tail off, and my engineers and designers were willing to work their tail off, we could build that whole thing in 72 hours, just live on caffeine, get this thing built and get it onto the website. And sometimes we wouldn't even quality assure it. We witness the bugs on the live site and fix them later, kind of thing. After we were a public, seriously, I mean, the only thing that was always guaranteed to work properly on that website were the actual transactions. Those were always 100% secure. Those always worked without fail. But everything else, we were willing to play fast and loose. So by the time, after we became public, and you're getting into mid 2002, just to fix a bug, to fix an obvious bug on the website, I had to get approval from 6 people in different departments that were actually below me in the chain.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was crippling, because what companies tend to do is, when your priority is growth, you take risks because you have nothing to lose. But as soon as you're successful, then you start creating all these rules and processes to defend your worth, to defend your value. And so it becomes a process that's really hostile to someone who is not really interested in business and was there for the adventure. And so I was out almost immediately. Like I said, we IPO'd in February, and I was gone by the end of May.
Did you ever get your chance to get your stock options?
Oh, well, so I had, I had just over half of my stock options had vested. We were on a kind of a standard 4-year vesting cycle, so every year 25% of your shares or your stock options would vest. And so I got a little over half of the stock that I had originally jumped in for, and which was a nice amount. I never, I didn't become a one of these big rich multimillionaires over it, but we did well. We did well. Definitely more than enough to make it financially worth my while and allow me to go back and pay for finishing up my education, and then we started a little business here in Albuquerque. Something that we wanted to stay home with our kids. And we already had our little girls when I went back to school. Our little girls were born, twins, in June of 2003. And we wanted to stay home with them. And, I knew a few things about selling stuff online. So we started doing that. We did that for 4 years, just hanging out at home and doing a lot of traveling and enjoying ourselves and enjoying our little ones. And, then I got the itch to get involved in the outside world again, basically. And I had always wanted to be, always growing up as a kid, I had always wanted to be in the military. And, again, when I was at Stanford, I had, flirted with the Marines and different things. And now having a young family, it was a bit much for me to bite off to commit to being deployed and being away from them for long periods of time. But I ran into a friend of ours from Stanford who had briefly played in the NFL, Randy Fasani. He had been a backup quarterback for the Panthers. He had been our quarterback there at Stanford. And he had become a police officer in Sacramento. And he loved it. He absolutely adored it. He said it was the most fun he'd ever had in his life. He said there was nothing like it, and that I had to try it out. And so I did, and I love it, and I've been doing it for 9 years, and it's a thrill every shift.
Stay tuned for The Investor Show.
Wow. That's a truly... How old are you now, Paul?
I'm 37.
37 now. You've been through... You had some got a pretty interesting story going on from, you're talking about like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Eric Jackson, to these guys are going on, just for the people out there listening, what's significant about this PayPal piece that became so important in Silicon Valley?
Well, so the people that were there, everyone's now calling them the PayPal Mafia, and they've created so many different companies. It's fantastic. And even some things that I think a lot of people don't realize are connected to them. There's David Sachs produced a great movie called Thank You for Smoking back some years ago. One of the funniest movies I've ever seen. And that was a dream of his. And he did that. And they've created so many different companies. And now most of those guys, they're on their, second or third post-PayPal company at this point that they've created or helped create, or in the case of David Sachs with Zenefits, taking a failing company and taking it under his wing and then brought it back to prominence. And it's just it's a group of people that, they've taken that experience, but they've also taken their relationships, and they're leveraging those relationships constantly to help each other create new ventures. They're constantly investing in each other's new ventures. They're constantly using their network. Whether it's Reid Hoffman is a perfect example. He went and created LinkedIn, and which is kind of a nexus for everybody's networking now. And he was, there he was, another one of that PayPal group, and they just are constantly, building their network. And that group really has become one of the primary drivers of innovation on the West Coast right now.
Well, you got, I know you said LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, all type of stuff that came out of that PayPal group that started. That's pretty interesting, going from a, not bad, going from a Stanford newspaper, conservative newspaper, to turning into the phenom it became into. And then the eBay ended up buying PayPal, right?
Yes. So the end of that story was that PayPal became such a problem for them that they finally realized that they were absolutely going to have to make a purchase there. And they had actually started to approach us around the end of 2001, but their offer was way too small. I think it was something on the order of 500 million. And I think a similar offer had been made by Yahoo, though I'm not sure how serious that became. They made a serious offer. They made a serious prelude. I remember we were all going to be going to Meg Whitman's house. That was the thing. She wanted to personally meet the executive team and the people who were directly involved in our auctions efforts. And so I was excited about that. Oh, this will be interesting. I'm going to go have dinner with the enemy in her fabulous mansion. And then I'm going to go back to my one-bedroom apartment. But that was canceled because the offer was just way too low. But PayPal, they basically made a wager that our IPO was not going to be successful. And that was not a crazy wager, because you've got to remember 9/11 happened. And no one was making an initial public offering. Nobody was making an IPO. And PayPal was the first post-9/11 IPO on the NASDAQ.
First post-9/11.
So it was. Say again?
I said, yeah, that's crazy. Being the first post 9/11 IPO.
And people were scared. People, in the financial community were extremely skeptical that you could make a traditional, successful, what had become the new traditional, successful internet IPO, for a startup. At that time, it was just the overall thought was, we don't live in that world anymore. This is not going to be successful. But it was very successful. And and then eBay realized, well, we're still going to have to buy them. It's just going to be a lot more expensive than we thought it was going to be. And so they ended up paying about $1.5 billion for PayPal, which, it's, I mean, no matter how you cut it, that's a lot of money. But it was a lot more money in 2002 than it would be in 2017 for a similar acquisition. And it was that was a bitter pill. I guarantee you that was a bitter pill for eBay to swallow.
Oh yeah. So now, going back, do you still communicate or talk to anybody from the PayPal days?
Yeah, now and then. I stay in touch with Eric, and I stay, every once in a while I have communications with Norman Book. Most of the guys, we've kind of gone different directions. I never, there was never like any falling out with any of them. If I ran into Chad or Yupan or Steve or, tomorrow, I'm sure we'd have a great time together. We just kind of exist in very different worlds now. True.
Understandable. Now, looking back over, your life so far, the PayPal days, is there any advice out there you would give a new startup, new entrepreneurs, or anything like that, or anything of your life you say, man, you know what, I wish I'd have done this a little different, or done that a little different?
I would say this. If you have the energy, and you can fully dedicate yourself to something like that, it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Even for someone like me who's not a business person and didn't, wasn't even attracted, by staying out in Silicon Valley or wherever, is totally worth it. Totally worth it. And even if you take that leap of faith and you fail, you're going to learn so much that in your next venture, you're going to have a huge leg up. Starting a business like that is like taking a decade's worth of experiences and cramming them into 6 months. You learn so much out of necessity. It's just invaluable. I mean, there's the networking component, but I fully believe that probably the primary reason that all these people have been so successful in creating subsequent businesses is because of the experiences they had, the actual learning that occurred in the process of making PayPal happen. And at this point, even if I was a business-oriented person, at this point in my life, there's no way I would take on something like that with 5 kids really involved in, and I just don't. Wow. I don't recover from sleep deprivation the same way that I did. but if you're either young or at least feel very youthful, and you're at a point in your life where an adventure like that is possible, I highly encourage people to get themselves into a situation like that rather than taking a safer, more traditional job at a more established firm, because you will just learn so vastly much more. And the opportunities for success are so much greater than if you put yourself inside a traditional organization where your ceiling is determined by politics in the office or something of that nature.
Yeah, politics and, the corporate da-da-da. So you say, okay, all right. So looking back, the second part of the question of, is there anything you kind of like regret or wish you'd have done different, or like, man, talking to the young self or something like that?
Probably the only thing that I would tell my younger self is I'd probably tell him to suck it up and stick around longer and let more of those shares vest. And tell him, you know what, if you hate your life for a little while, it's okay. On the other hand, that could have been the biggest mistake ever if I had done that, because I wasn't by myself. My wife and I had just gotten married, and I don't I don't know how our relationship would have necessarily weathered me living in an office for much longer. So it's hard
pretty
to
much
say.
you dedicated a lot of time there too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even at the point where we had IPO'd, the demands of the job were still very, very great. And, the kind of relationship that my wife and I have, I think that's probably what tipped the scale for me, and I went ahead and left, is I don't think it would have been healthy for us. And that's something you have to take into account,
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe I just tell myself, hey, do it all the same again, because I'm happy, so I can't have any big complaints.
All right. Well, Paul, it was nice having you. Definitely thank you for stopping by the Investor Show and sharing that pretty interesting story and wild story and stuff like that. As always, guys, this is the Investor Show. Anything you want to leave out with, Paul?
Chase your dreams.
Chase your dreams. Okay. But as always, guys, this is the Investor Show. This is your host, Prince Dykes. As always, until the next video podcast or wherever you might see me, peace, be safe, and I'm out.